Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bitesize Cinema. I'm your host RJ McCready, and for this episode I'm going to be taking you guys back to the year in 2000 to have a look at Leonardo DiCaprio's adventure backpacking drama The Beach. So let's go back to Thailand, let's go to that beach, let's play you guys a trailer and I'll see you soon.
Richard. So what else do you need to know? Stuff about my family or where I'm from? None of that matters. Not once you cross the ocean and cut yourself loose, looking for something more beautiful, something more exciting. And yes, I admit, something more dangerous. Bangkok, good time city, gateway to Southeast Asia.
Wanna drink snake blood?
It was a beach, beautiful, too much sensation. I tried to keep it under control, but it just keeps spilling out, spilling out, spilling out.
I was waiting for it to hit me. But it just wouldn't happen. I just feel like everyone tries to do something different, but they always wind up doing the same damn thing.
And welcome back, guys. So the synopsis for this film is Richard travels to Thailand and finds himself in possession of a strange map. Rumours state that it leads to a solitary beach paradise, a tropical bliss. So excited and intrigued, he sets out to find it. It's got a 119-minute runtime. It's classed as a adventure drama romance, and it's actually an R-rated movie. It's actually an 18. I didn't realise it was an 18, but I guess there's some elements in this film that sort of justify it being that R-rate. It was distributed by 20th Century Fox with a $15 million budget, and 20 million of that it was actually given to Leonardo DiCaprio because he was hot property at the time. And it did well. It did well at the cinema. It did $140 million return, so it wasn't too bad back in 2000. And it's based on a novel by Alex Garland, and he is a English writer. He wrote the novel back in 1996, and it sold really well. Everybody was reading it, and Alex Garland, he's familiar to cinema, especially the director of this film, Danny Boyle. He's written some screenplays for him. He did 28 Days Later, the sci-fi movie Sunshine, and he also did another sci-fi action-adventure movie related to the 2000 AD franchise, which is the Dread movie starring Carl Urban. I didn't actually know that until I read about all this. So he's a busy guy and, you know, a very clever bloke. Has his hands in a few different pies, and he also directed as well. He directed a movie called Ex Machina, which is another sci-fi movie. And going back to the Beach novel, it is actually recognised for the millennial generation, which is called the Gen X culture, which is a culture where I'll explain what it is looking at this. The take that I get on it is that you have a culture of people who I suppose in the early part of the century, you could say that people, got married and had a sort of system, and that's how you did things. And then, for example, you had a generation which they called the MTV generation in the 80s, where you had a little bit, modern technology, and people were watching music videos as a young generation. And I think what they're saying with the Gen X generation is it's the millennials, as people have gone into the millennium. The younger generations wanted to explore, they've wanted to branch out, they want to go on their own adventures, and it's all about having a active, happy work-life balance. So this book goes into that, and I'll explain a little bit more with this story when I do the film review later on. But as a roundup, it's basically the backpacker generation, which is still happening now. People are still going out exploring, after universities and taking years out. And I remember that being a big thing back in the day when I watched this. I think it kind of ignited that a little bit more with this film as well. But the thing I got out of this was the darker elements of that, which I'll explain why later on. But before I move into that story, I'm just going to talk about the director. Now, this is directed by Danny Boyle, and he's a hell of a director. He's a brilliant guy. He's a very influential director. He's very successful. I think he's one of the most successful British directors of our time. He's made some incredible movies. He's done Trainspotting, Shallow Grave, Slumdog Millionaire, the Game Changer, 28 Days Later, pretty much reignited the zombie genre. He did Sunshine, 127 Hours with James Franco, and more recently he's done a sort of musical with a bit of spin on it, which is Yesterday, which is quite a good film. And he's also won 8 Academy Awards. He's done very well, he's very successful. But ultimately with Danny Boyle, I really like him because I feel like he's created this signature of films, as I've mentioned this before in my movie reviews with directors. I think that some directors, when you hear their name, you kind of know that something special is going to happen with that film, whether it's going to be a horror element or an action element. It's like you've got Quentin Tarantino, say for example. When you hear his name, people generally come out and say, well, what if Quentin Tarantino directed Jurassic Park? People would say, oh my god, I bet that'd be a really violent movie or something like that, which it is. It's generally known for something dark, something violent. Now, when I hear Danny Boyle, I tend to think the same thing, because his films tend to have a dark element in generally human society. You had it with Shallow Grave. It was exploring what someone decent would do in a situation which would make them almost like a killer, which is the case in that story there with I think it was Ewan McGregor. And a bit of a spoiler here with Shallow Grave, where you got the really nice Christopher Eccleston character who's completely turns into almost like a psycho in that movie. And then you've got Trainspotting, which obviously explores the dark side of narcotics and that effect of drug abuse. And then you've got 28 Days Later, where you've got the social breakdown. You've got not zombies in that film, but you've got like an infection. You've got survivors who are thinking, I've got to get away from these infected. But ultimately, by the end of that movie, and again another spoiler here, the whole point of that movie, which he explores, is the fact that the real threat there is actually humans. Humans are still the threat. They're still going to try and have you over, or try and kill you, or try and sort of benefit in some ways. There's that selfishness. So, and again with Sunshine, I think it's a sci-fi movie, but they're still questioning humanity. And I just like that every time Danny Boyle brings out a movie, he just explores the social network and what we would do as a society to each other in a story which is either, like I said, connected with narcotics, zombies, exploration, sci-fi. And with this film, where it's when I watched this back in the day, it's about a guy who goes looking for paradise. He's looking for a beach. He's looking to explore. He's a young guy, and he finds this paradise. And then ultimately, by the end of it, he still has to deal with the same everyday lives, you know, selfishness, greed, people that just want to carry on within their own worlds. They don't want to deal with it. You know, obviously someone later on in the film gets mutilated by a shark, and that's where things tend to go wrong in the story. So it's just, yeah, I like that. I like where Danny Boyle goes with that, and I think it's great when a director generally has that signature, so when you see his name you kind of generally know that something like that is possibly going to happen. And I would have been interested to see what he would have actually done with the James Bond franchise, because he was going to take it on, but then he was dropped very quickly when he started putting a few ideas on the table. And you probably know that he would have had James Bond suffering some sort of something possibly drug related, or maybe made him like an anti-hero or something like that. It would have probably taken a fresh spin on the franchise. But I guess I'll be in forever wonder with that, what he would have done with that. But there you go, that is Danny Boyle, and I guess there's still some great stuff to come from this guy, so we have to wait and see what he does in the future. So that is Danny Boyle. Like I say, great director, does some great stuff. But let's move on, let's have a look at the cast, who else is in this movie. So the other cast in this movie is Virginia Ledgon. She's a French actress, she plays Francois. Gwilyn Canet, he plays Etienne. Sorry guys, I can't pronounce these names. He's done very well for himself actually. He became a director, he's a French director, and he brought out a thriller a few years ago called Tell No One, which I think did really well. You got Robert Carlyle, he's always good in everything he does. He plays a character called Duffy, and I think he rose to fame in The Full Monty, and he's also in 28 Weeks Later, which is another Boyle movie. Although slight correction there guys, I don't think 28 Weeks Later was directed by Boyle, I think it was handed over. But anyway, Robert Carlyle, great actor, pretty good in whatever he does. And you also got Tilda Swinton, she's very menacing. She's recently turned up in Suspiria, and she played the witch in The Lion, the Witch in the Wardrobe, yeah, so she's a great actress. She really does bring some conviction to the table. But going back to DiCaprio, I was going to go back to him, and like I say, he got paid a lot of money. He just come off from the success of the Titanic. He's a good looking guy, but he's one of those actors which I think has just managed not to typecast himself. He could have gone down that sort of pretty boy role, could have just vanished. But for me, going on to a film like this, he just changed it a little bit, and it all changed for me when he did a film called Blood Diamond, where he plays a South African bounty hunter, and then he's gone on to go and do Gangs of New York, and more recently he's done Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's become a really good actor actually. He's not one of those guys that he's pretty good in whatever he does, so yeah, I've got a lot of time for him as an actor actually. And the film was actually filmed in Thailand. They found a lovely island called Koh Phi Lee in Phuket, and they had some problems with this because the locals complained. They reckon they ruined this island, so there was a lawsuit against them, which I think has been cleared up now. But I remember that being famous back in the day, where they had problems with that. And you also had Ewan McGregor, who was lined up to play the main role of Richard, but he got dropped, and apparently caused a feud between Ewan McGregor and Danny Boyle, to the point where Ewan McGregor was supposed to be in 28 Days Later, but Ewan McGregor turned it down for this reason. But at the same time, DiCaprio does a good job in this film, but I could have also seen McGregor do it as well. I think he would have done a good job as well. So there you go, one of those mysteries which we'll never know, but the old alternative R.J. McCready universe. So there you go guys, that is a roundup, that's a production, that's how we got The Beach. Before I go into the bite-sized review here guys, I'll just talk about the soundtrack here and the songs in this movie. So you've got Moby that does the Porcelain songs, a very nice song. It's really sort of like a sort of real chill out song. I'll post it on the page later on for you guys to have a listen to. And you also got the All Saints, they're a girl band back in the 2000s. They did a really good job here with this song, really like it. It's a real sort of, it's a song you want to listen to when you go on holidays. The Pure Shores, it did really well. I think it was a #1 hit. And yeah, it's a really good song. It's just like I say, it's just something you want to listen to when you go to the beach. Makes you feel like, you know, you got the sun shining in your face and the waves and all that sort of stuff. And the composer for this was an American composer called Angelo, I can't pronounce his name, Badalamenti, I think that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, he also did the music to Twin Peaks, so it's got that real sort of haunting sort of score to it. So yeah, so you get a really good package here, like say with the director, the music, the actors, the story and everything. So as a roundup, you know, it's quite a nice sort of building block for this movie. So let's have a talk about the film. Let's do a bite-sized review of The Beach. So the film starts off with Richard. He's a young American seeking some adventure in Bangkok, and he stays in a traveller's hotel where he meets a young French couple called Francois and Etienne. And he immediately becomes attracted to Francois. He also meets a character called Duffy, which is played by Robert Carlyle, and he tells him of this pristine, uninhabited, restricted island in Thailand. And he says, you know, it's a beautiful beach and a lagoon. He says, just not any old beach, this is a magical beach. Duffy then explains to Richard that there is a community on the island, but he had to leave due to some problems that he was having. But during the night, Duffy commits suicide and he leaves Richard a map to the island. Richard, with this map, he manages to convince Francois and Etienne to accompany him to an adventure to go and find the island, and the three backpackers now go on an adventure to go and find this island. And along the way they stop off on a island called Koh Sumai, and this is where they meet some American surfers and they hang out with each other for the night, have a bit of fun. And this is where Richard tells them about the story of this island, and these guys know about it. They sort of say it's a bit of an urban legend in Thailand, and they also say it's an area where a large amount of cannabis is being grown and smuggled. And they kind of tell them about the dangers of going to this island. And then in the morning, before Richard leaves, he makes another map and makes a duplicate of the map, and he leaves it to the Americans. And I think he does this just as in a way of a type of insurance policy, just in case he either gets lost or stranded, or he just wants someone else to know where he is in case he does go missing. They eventually arrive at the island, but before they get there, they have to swim about a mile or 2 miles, and this is where Richard is stood there. All three of them stood there, looking at the swim ahead, and this is where Richard comes out and goes, I was thinking more miles than kilometres. And they're swimming. You get a nice scene here where they're swimming towards the island, and you've got the got the music in the background. You've got some nice composed music. It's almost like sort of chill out music. And then you get Richard. He's sort of messing about. He pretends that he's getting attacked by a shark, so you get a little bit of drama here, but he's just messing around. And this is where Antion is kind of going, you know, Richard, you're an idiot. And he is starting to take, Antion now is starting to take the role of the adult, or he's the guy, he's the voice of reason, where the other two, Richard and Francois, are a little bit reckless at this time. And then when they reach the island, they come across a cannabis plantation with Thai guys with guns and everything. And I think at this point you probably go, let's get out of here, guys. But again, they're sort of swayed by the paradise. Overlooking that, and they want to find this retreat with this map and this adventure that they're going on. So then, after avoiding detection with the drug smugglers, they find a community of travellers, and they're self-sufficient. It's totally a secret. They've got running water, food, shelter, and the community's leader is run by Sal, who's played by Tilda Swinton, as I mentioned earlier. And she has a number of questions for Richard to say, you know, how have you got here? He explains the story, and he promises her that he has not told anybody, that, which is a lie, because he did tell the Americans. But she believes his story, and she welcomes the trio to the camp. And this is where you've got a scene now where Richard and his two other friends are running around, having a good time, spending some nice time on the beach. It's beautiful scenery, and this is where you get the Pure Shores now by the All Saints as they're running around. So they're generally having a good time, and they're fitting in with the community. Then nighttime falls, and you get Francois, who privately invites Richard to the beach, and she tells him that she's falling in love with him. And you get a scene here where they make love to each other in the sea. Whilst all this is going on, Ention is secretly watching all this, and he finds out, what's going on, and he says, "I'm not going to get in your way. If you love each other, you love each other." And he tells Richard, he said, just, treat her right. And as I said earlier, Ention is becoming more like the voice of reason. He's beginning to question the camp. He's trying to do the right thing. Whilst Richard is becoming a little bit more reckless, he feels like he's starting to rule the roost. There's a scene where he kills a shark, and then one of the camp members, called Bugs, which is actually Sal's South African boyfriend, he says to Richard, he said, "It's okay, you're glorifying the fact that you've killed a shark, but that is the baby shark." He said, "How about if you have a go at the mother, who is eventually going to turn up?" And then Richard is sort of throwing it all off. He's becoming very cocky. And to be honest with you, Bugs has actually got a point here with this, with what he is doing, which Richard then throws it all back. He says he's jealous, and he's got the popularity of the camp now. So Bugs goes away all frustrated at this time. And to make matters worse, Sal selects Richard to accompany her on a supply run back to the mainland. And whilst on the mainland, this is where Richard bumps into the American guys he gave the map to, and they start talking about the island. And then this is where Sal goes, "I thought you didn't tell anybody." And Richard basically says, "No, I didn't." And he basically tries to cover it all up. So that night, they also have some sex with each other, despite the fact that they've got some partners back on the island, and they try to keep that a secret between them. So all these things are kind of sort of going out of control here. And then they return to the island, and then this is where Francois says, "Is everything alright? Did you guys get up to anything?" And he sort of lies about them, having sex with each other. And then generally things return back to normal with the camp. You've got the island community running, and you think things are going fine. Up until this point now, which I think is like the pinnacle of this film, you get a gruesome shark attack with some of the camp members, and they get brutally mutilated. You get their limbs torn off, and it's quite a horrific scene. It's to the point where it goes from a nice adventure movie to now it's kind of borderline like traumatic, a little bit horrific horror, I suppose you could say. And this is where you get the divide in the community. It's kind of what I said earlier with this film. You've got paradise, you've got the idyllic lifestyle, and it's all about what people are willing to do to try and keep that lifestyle, because it doesn't matter where you go, you've still got responsibilities. And this is one of those responsibilities where you've got your camp members, three or four of them are being attacked by a shark. But then this is where Sal goes, "Well, I want to avoid this because this is now interrupting my lifestyle, my idyllic lifestyle. And I don't want to get involved with this. I don't want to look after these guys." And now you get divided in the camp, and you get Ention. Again, as I said, he's always been the kind of voice of reason. And he's the guy who helps these characters out. And he gets left on his own in a tent with a guy who's dying. And it's quite a horrific scene, actually, when you watch this. I remember watching it back in the cinema, thinking what people are willing to do to try and stick to this lifestyle and evade all responsibility here. So poor old Ention is left in the camp, and this is what he says to Richard. He says to him, "I can't believe you. I can't believe this. This is disgusting. I hate your community. I'm just going to get out of it." He says, "You're just willing to leave a guy to die." So like I say, it's really where this film turns. And then you've got the surfers who turn up as well to make matters worse with Sol. She furiously orders Richard to now observe them until they leave. And then Sal tells everybody in the community that she had sex with Richard. So now you've got a divide. The group now splits up. So you've now got anarchy within the community. And now this is where Richard kind of goes off the loop a little bit. He starts beginning to lose his sanity. He starts stalking the cannabis farmers. He starts stealing some of their items. And it just becomes like the man of the wilderness. And there's a crazy scene. I remember talking about this when this came out. It's just I've never seen anything like it. It's like he turns into a computer game character, and he's running around and he's like collecting points, and he's just, I guess it's just all this weirdness that's going on in his brain. And then the American surfers who have reached the island, they get captured by the drug smugglers, and they get killed, which Richard witnesses. So all this that's going on, you've got the shark attack, you've got the camp community that's been divided, you've got the surfers that are now being killed by the drug smugglers. So, you know, what once was paradise has now turned into hell, pretty much. And Richard goes back to the camp and he goes to Encion. He says, look, you know, Christo said, we've got to get off this island. But then again, Encion says, you know, I'm not leaving this shark attack victim whose, you know, leg has become sort of gangrenous now. But then you get another, like I say, you get another dark scene now where now Richard suffocates this guy, you know, this shark victim. He kills him. Richard is then captured by the drug smugglers and they take him back to the camp community. It's where you find out that they have actually allowed this community to be on the island, just as long as they don't break any deals with any newcomers and that. So they found this out. And you've got a scene now of the farmer who gives Sal a loaded gun with a single bullet and orders her to make a choice, kill Richard and the group will be allowed to stay, or else they must then all leave the island. So then you get a scene here where Sal pulls the trigger but the chamber is now empty, and shocked by her willingness to commit murder here, this is where the group say that's it, enough is enough, and this is where everybody ends up leaving the island. And that's pretty much where the film comes to a close now. You've got that the community breaks down and everybody leaves, and it cuts to a scene where Richard is now back in the USA. He's carrying on with his normal life, and then he gets an email from Francois, and it's a picture of the three of them as they're about to go on their adventures when things were happier times. So I think it's more of a sort of nostalgia thing that she's sending him, not to sort of resurrect a relationship or anything like that. But that's it. It's kind of like sort of left as an open ending. But there you go. That is it. That is The Beach from 2000. So it is a, as I said earlier, it starts off as an adventure film, trying to find paradise, and you know, once they do find paradise, they have a good time. But then all of a sudden, it turns into a very, very dark movie for the last part of this movie, which I sometimes forget about. You know, I don't watch this film all the time, but when I do revisit, I think, wow, you know, you get the shark attack, you get the farmers killing the American surfers, you get Richard. He actually murders somebody in this film. You know, he kills that shark victim, and he gets away with it. So ultimately, like I say, it's a very sort of dark Danny Boyle movie, which I think is worth revisiting if you haven't seen it for a while. It's worth having a look at. And the other thing I was going to mention as well is it's very similar to, or in fact, it's another telling, I guess you could say, of the William Golding Lord of the Flies movie, where you kind of got the boys stranded on the island. You got the divide between the two. Sort of like the righteousness and the recklessness, and what people are, you know, willing to do in these environments and stuff like that. So, and it's also a isolation movie as well, I guess you could say, which is another favourite genre of mine in the movie world. So there you go. It's I'm glad I'm covered this one for the show. It's I thought I'd do something a little bit different from, you know, sort of like the action and the horror. It's a little bit of a deep episode. I've gone into a few deep areas here, but like I say, it's just good to cover stuff like that, and it's good from the storyteller and the director and all that. I do like it when something is created which is different. You know, when you go to watch a film and you think you've come away with something there. So there you go, guys. That is The Beach. Hope you enjoyed the show there. I will close on that. Hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. So a little bit of admin, guys, for the show. I will be back soon. I've got quite a busy schedule at the moment, actually. I've just recorded some guest episodes, as you know, with Dan Bone with Enter the Dragon. I recently recorded Beverly Hills Cop with Mark Lockhart. We had a lot of fun there with that. And I've got The Man with the Golden Gun coming up as a solo episode. And I've got some more guest spots coming up. I've got Dan coming back for Jackie Chan's Police Story. I'm really looking forward to doing that. And I've also got Gary Hill from Cinema Beef podcast. He mentioned a film called Remo Williams with Fred Ward. I've never seen it before. But I had a quick look on YouTube. I saw a little clip of him running through some cement, doing some ninja stuff. And I was sold straight away. So look out for that episode. We'll be recording soon. That should be dropping in the next few weeks or so. So yeah, there you go, guys. I'm also a proud member of Legion Podcast Network. So go and check out all the other shows there, and you can find Bitesize Cinema podcasts on iTunes and YouTube and several other players on the internet if you put in Bitesize Cinema podcast. So there you go, guys. I've got to close the show now, so keep it bite-sized, keep it safe, and I will see you soon.
If you enjoyed this show, then make sure you check out the other great shows on the Legion Podcast Network, like Cinema Psyops, Cinema Beef, Devour the Podcast, Duncan and Bo Come Correct, Exploding Heads Horror Movie Podcast, Friday the 13th, Get Slayed, The Helming Power Hour, Hello, This is the Doom Show, Hero Hero Go Show, Kill the Cast, Underwater Kaiju from Outer Space, Jerry Hates Action, Legion After Dark, Mental Health, Obsessive Cinema, Discourse, Pick 6 Movies, the podcast by The Cemetery, the podcast on Haunted Hill, the Psychosemantic Podcast, Rick Radio, House of Wax, Dude Looks Like the 80s, Rabbit and Red Radio, the Shadecast, Short Bus Cinema, 2 Drink Minimum Commentaries, the VD Clinic, Who Will Survive Horror Podcast, and Witch vs. the Doomsday Clock. With such a wide spread of shows, there is guaranteed to be a niche for you to fall in love with. Horror, politics, movies, books, sex, music, commentaries, health, video games, kaiju, action, news, comedy, and opinions that would most likely get you killed in some parts of the world. We are proud to bring you some of the best podcasting in the world. Check us out at www.legionpodcast.com, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other dark corner of the internet where podcasts can be found.